Elijah and the prophets of Baal, the day fire fell from heaven. An entire nation faced a choice between the living God and Baal. One prophet stood against hundreds on Mount Carmel. What happened next changed Israel forever. For 3 years, no rain fell across Israel. The rivers dried up. The fields turned to dust. Crops failed throughout the land. The people suffered a terrible famine, just as the Lord had spoken through Elijah. Then the Lord spoke to Elijah. God told Elijah to appear before King Ahab. God promised to send rain upon the earth. Without hesitation, Elijah obeyed. The famine in Samaria became severe. Even the king struggled to keep his horses and mules alive. King Ahab summoned Obadiah, the governor of his household. Obadiah faithfully feared the Lord. Jezebel ordered the Lord's prophets to be killed. Obadiah secretly hid 100 prophets. He supplied them with bread and water, risking his own life. Now Ahab and Obadiah searched the land for pasture. As Obadiah traveled alone, he saw a familiar figure. It was Elijah. Obadiah recognized the prophet and bowed before him. "Are you my lord Elijah?" Elijah answered, "I am." Elijah told Obadiah to inform King Ahab that he was there. Fear filled Obadiah's heart. Ahab had searched everywhere for Elijah. Obadiah feared he would be killed if Elijah disappeared again. Elijah assured Obadiah that he would meet King Ahab that very day. Trusting Elijah's word, Obadiah returned to King Ahab. When Ahab heard the news, he went to meet Elijah. The king finally came face to face with Elijah. Ahab accused Elijah of troubling Israel. Elijah stood firm without fear. Elijah declared that Ahab had abandoned the Lord's commands. He said Ahab had followed Baal instead. Then Elijah issued an extraordinary challenge. He called for all Israel to gather at Mount Carmel. The prophets of Baal were summoned to the mountain. The prophets who ate at Jezebel's table also came. The people gathered on Mount Carmel. Hundreds of false prophets stood proudly before the crowd. Elijah stood alone as the prophet of the living God. Silence covered the mountain. Elijah stepped forward to address the people. "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, if Baal, follow Baal." The people said nothing. Elijah proposed a test everyone could witness. 2 bulls would be prepared for sacrifice. The prophets of Baal would prepare one altar. Elijah would prepare another altar for the Lord. Neither altar would be set on fire. Each side would call upon its God. The God who answered with fire would be the true God. The people agreed to the test. The prophets of Baal chose their bull. They prepared it and placed it on their altar. From morning until noon, the prophets of Baal cried out to their God. "O Baal, hear us," they shouted. But there was no voice. There was no answer. No response came. The prophets leaped upon the altar. They shouted even louder. Still, nothing happened. At noon, Elijah began to mock them. "Cry louder, for perhaps he is a god." Elijah suggested their god might be busy, traveling, or asleep. The prophets became even more desperate. They shouted until their voices grew weak. According to their custom, they cut themselves with knives and lances. They continued their desperate ritual, but no answer came. From noon until evening, they kept crying out. No answer came. Still, no voice answered them. No one paid attention. The mountain remained silent. Then Elijah called the people closer. The people gathered around Elijah. Before everyone, Elijah repaired the broken altar of the Lord. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. The stones reminded Israel of God's everlasting covenant. He rebuilt the altar. He dug a trench around it. He arranged the wood. He cut the bull into pieces. He placed the sacrifice upon the altar. Fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the sacrifice and the wood. Then Elijah gave an astonishing command. The people obeyed. Again Elijah said, "Do it a second time." Then Elijah commanded, Do it a third time." They obeyed again. Once again, they obeyed. The sacrifice was completely soaked. The trench overflowed with water. The wood was drenched. No one could doubt that no human fire could light this altar. The moment of decision had arrived. Elijah stepped forward alone. The evening sacrifice drew near. The mountain became completely still. Elijah lifted his voice toward heaven and prayed, "Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you alone are God in Israel. Show that I am your servant. Everything I have done was at your command. Hear me, O Lord, hear me. So these people will know that you are the Lord God. Turn their hearts back to you again." Elijah's prayer was simple. It was sincere. It honored God alone. Then, in an instant, heaven answered. The fire of the Lord fell. The flames consumed the sacrifice. The fire consumed the wood. The fire consumed the stones. The fire consumed the dust. Even the water in the trench disappeared before God's power. Everyone on the mountain witnessed the miracle. The people fell on their faces. Together they cried, "The Lord, He is God." Again they declared, "The Lord, He is God." Israel had seen undeniable proof. The living God alone had answered. Then Elijah gave another command. "Seize the prophets of Baal. Let none escape." The people seized the prophets. Elijah led them toward the brook Kishon. Judgment was carried out at the brook Kishon. The deception of Baal finally came to an end. After judgment was complete, Elijah turned to King Ahab. Elijah said, "Go, eat and drink, for I hear the sound of heavy rain." Yet the sky remained completely clear. Still, Elijah trusted God's promise. He climbed to the top of Mount Carmel. There he bowed low to the ground in humble prayer. He told his servant, "Go and look toward the sea." The servant went to look. He returned and said, "There is nothing." Elijah prayed again and sent him back. Again and again, Elijah sent his servant to look toward the sea. The seventh time, the servant looked once more toward the sea. He hurried back with exciting news. "A little cloud is rising from the sea, no bigger than a man's hand." Elijah said, "Tell Ahab to leave now before the rain stops him." Within moments, the sky grew dark with heavy clouds. The wind began to blow, and thunder rolled across the heavens. Then the long-awaited rain poured down upon the thirsty land. The drought was over, and God had kept his promise. King Ahab rode swiftly toward Jezreel. The hand of the Lord came upon Elijah. The prophet who stood alone now ran in God's strength. Elijah ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to Jezreel. God's mercy covered the land once again. Choose to trust the living God, for He always keeps His promises.